hopefully I have some of you back. Let's see if a few other people are having trouble getting in. While we're waiting, I'm going to pull up the thesis statement handout and let you read over it. I'll share my screen here. And then we're going to talk about, I'd like to talk about Anurag's comments about language. These are the basic guidelines for a thesis statement. All right, back to what Anurag was talking about, which is very interesting.
Yes, ma'am. So, I mean, so like I was saying, I just think like in my personal experience, if I would have been a different person depending on the language I spoke up with, like I started speaking in the first place, because I did not start speaking English first. But I'm still doubting whether, I'm still questioning myself if that's going to be a valid topic. But
That sounds like a valid topic. You just want to make a point about it. So what I feel like you're getting toward is learning English as a second language changed you or changed your future? No?
English in school was my first language, but like till the age of 4 or 5, I was speaking another language. So as in I wasn't really speaking English. So
what did learning English do in your life?
It changed my surroundings. I was with different people because I was speaking a certain language, which might have changed things. I mean, I'm not completely sure about that as well.
Yeah, it's hard to know like what would have happened if you hadn't. That's like, yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be speculation.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you could to a degree. I don't know if you have friends or acquaintances who were like with you at that stage who did not follow the same path.
Yeah.
You may want to explore. You got to be careful that you want to make a strong point. That's the thing about the thesis statement. You want to say how you think the learning another language affected you.
Yeah. And ma'am, like now I'm thinking of doing like how learning my mother tongue actually shaped me and the personal connection I have towards that language. Like I want to do this now. I mean, I've thought about it, and even like whatever I did in my draft so far was based on this. So is that okay as a topic? Like,
yeah, sometimes a draft is a way to just figure out what you want to write about. So I still give you guys credit for the work if you totally decide to change your topic. In fact, I give you more credit because it's more work for you.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just consider it an exploratory draft.
Yeah.
And then work on, yeah, sometimes you have to see that it's not working in order to know, unfortunately. Yeah. So yeah, that also sounds like an interesting, you know, I know watching media in other languages has made me aware of concepts that we don't have in our language,
Yeah.
you know, which is interesting to me, and ways of thinking about the world that are reflected in a language. So yeah, that's another essay that I'd be interested in writing, is like, how does knowing that there are different words in other languages that we don't have words for show the difference in cultures?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's interesting. Sorry, I should have watched the time. I didn't mean to cut you off right there.
Oh, no. That's okay. We were going to get cut off anyway. It's good that you at least saw it, because we would be clueless if that didn't happen.
So yeah, you want to, whatever your topic is, you want to make a strong point about it rather than an observation. So an observation would be like, if we took the song one, an observation would be like, music has an effect on me.
Yeah. This is an observation on how my language affected me.
Yeah, so you have to tell us, make a strong point about how your language affected your life, or your whatever it is that you want to explore. Yeah. So let's go back to the basics of the thesis statement. Okay. Thesis statements are usually about 1 to 3 sentences long. For shorter works, they tend to be about 1 sentence, 1 to 2. You may be doing longer works eventually. A lot of you are talking about going to law school or medical school, or getting a thesis, a master's, which you would have to write a thesis for. Then you might have a 3-sentence thesis. But you're usually going to see, in most of the writing you're doing right now, 1 to 2 sentences. Okay. And I think I mentioned this before, it's usually located for an academic paper, the last sentence of the first paragraph or the first sentence of the second paragraph. So in that layer between your first and second paragraph. Okay. It is a strong point, not an observation, a fact, or a question. If you're tempted to write a question, answer the question and you'll have your thesis. Okay. It has to be somewhat debatable. There has to be somebody out there in the world. I mean, there's always somebody, but you know what I'm saying? There has to be enough people out there in the world to go, I'm not sure I agree, and I could debate that. Okay? You don't want to make it too broad or specific. That sounds like crazy vague, I know, but basically what it means is, once you learn about how much you know and tend to write about a subject, you have to choose one that's, because if I gave you an 8-page paper, what you could cover, right, is a lot more than what you could cover in this 3 pages. So you have to tailor your thesis to the length of the paper. I always say err on the side of going too small, because you can always expand your thesis and include more things. It's very hard to contract it if you, like, we get to the research paper and people are like, I will talk about the death penalty. That's a huge topic that people have written books on. If you try to talk about everything regarding the death penalty in an 8 to 10-page paper, you just can't make it. And then you'll have to throw out a lot of stuff, and I'll say, this is all pretty much like an encyclopedia entry and not really focused on any issue. So always err on the side of being too small in what you're covering, because you can always broaden it out without losing any work. Okay. Some longer pieces of writing can benefit from what's called an essay map, which basically is a nice thing for you guys too, because it organizes. So let's say I'm using the music one a lot. Let's take a different one. So if I was doing my one on how being an exchange student, how letters were vital to helping with my homesickness. Okay, so in my essay map, I could say they make me feel connected with home. They entertained me. I'd come up with 3 things to put in the essay map that would basically map out what I was going to talk about. So let me send that to you guys in the chat. I will email this as part of our roundup, and it will also be posted on Brightspace, this handout. I'll be asking about this on the midterm. So an essay map just generally in your thesis embeds the major topics that you're going to talk about. Okay. So letters from home helped me cope as an exchange student because they kept me in touch with my family, connected me with my friends, and they gave me an outlet for my homesickness. So, if that was my thesis, then you would expect me to talk about those three things. I have just mapped out for you and for myself what I am going to exactly talk about in each section of my paper. Those are my three supporting ideas, like pillars for my thesis. Okay, so for those of you who are also struggling with getting the link that you need, think about what are your three main ideas that support your thesis. If you're going to say music makes me feel a certain way, you know, or now I've lost the chat, so see, I'm trying to remember. Music makes me feel strong emotions, something like that. And then your second sentence, if you wanted to do that instead of just to continue it, country music makes me feel, be your essay map, sad, rock makes me feel energized, angry, and classical makes me feel beauteous. I don't know. That's my writing music, classical. All right. So once you have your strong idea, you have to ask yourself, how can you show people? What are three ways, three aspects of it you can show them? And then if you have an essay map, then basically if you kind of divide up your paper, you have your introduction technique. Don't forget you need a good intro technique, right? Then you get into your thesis. Now for an informal essay, I will allow you if you want to put your thesis at the end. Like he does in the Malcolm X essay, right? At the end is where he says, eventually learning to read, I had never felt so free. His basic overall statement is at the end of the essay. And sometimes it feels like more natural to do that for a story, especially. So it can be at the end for this essay. I will just let you know for academic essays, it's typically always at the beginning. So consider an essay map. Because then it gives you a brief outline to follow, right? Don't forget the conclusion techniques we talked about. So, you know, how are you going to sum up your experience? Are you going to speculate on what music will mean for you in the future? I'm just stuck on music today. How language will shape you in the future, how reading, you know. So remember, speculate on the future is one option. Suggest. You don't want to get too preachy. That's the only problem with suggest a course of action. I'll just caution you. You don't want to be like, so seize the day and everyone listen to country music, you know, then people will be like. So without being preachy, you can suggest a course of action. Or one of the other intro techniques we talked about, quote, still applies. You aren't going to do any outside research for this one, but most quotes are considered what we call common knowledge. They're famous, okay? That means I can go to any decent library and look them up in about 5 minutes, okay? Common knowledge are things like dates, they're things nobody owns, and they're very famous quotations or texts. Shakespeare, you don't have to cite a certain book. Basically, if we can look it up pretty quickly at any decent library, it's probably common knowledge. Questions so far?
Yes, ma'am. I had one question.
Mm-hmm.
In a couple of examples I had seen, and even in the one by Purdue that you had sent for the MLA format, there are a lot of references and quotes used, but it's not compulsory that there has to be quotes and references in our, because it depends on the story. Is that how it is?
You're talking about references?
Yeah, references and quotes or certain examples.
Right. Most of the time, and we haven't gotten to outside research yet,
Mm-hmm.
so you won't have to have a works cited page for this essay. So don't worry so much about that. We are going to talk about that next, and you guys are going to do some group presentations on it. But no, the only formatting thing we're talking about right now is pretty much the cover page and the page numbers.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Good question.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, I want to give you guys some time to peer review. So, exchange your drafts. Remember the peer review. Don't pick on their grammar and spelling and punctuation yet, because they weren't worried about that. Help them by asking for information. Okay? Ask for more examples. Ask them to describe something that you'd like to see. Ask them to explain something if you're not quite sure how they're making the connection between song lyrics and an emotion, something like that, okay? So ask questions. That's the best way to elicit more information, you know. And help them identify the thesis. Sometimes it's easier for us as readers to get a sense of what the main idea is from what they're saying and say, hey, this is the main idea I'm getting from you. So tell them what you think the thesis is. So read and comment on the paper, and then discuss it with them. Okay. So, questions so far? Everybody knows what, I'm going to break you up then into groups and let you exchange papers in the breakout rooms. All right, then go ahead and exchange papers and get started. Try to give 2 opinions and get 2 opinions on your paper, so you have stuff to work with to work on revising the draft next week. Okay? All right, and we'll come back shortly before the time is up, see if anybody has any questions and see if anybody wants to talk to me about the paper. Okay, and I'll be here. You can send me an email if you have a question. Otherwise, work on helping each other out. Okay, guys. Abby, Kaylee, Jason, are you guys joining the groups?